it. Let's
Hello.
do it. Hi.
I haven't seen you in a while.
So, what is the purpose of this mysterious call?
I don't know. You and I have been talking about how we should do a video for a while, so I thought
Yeah,
we had time for
nice improv, nice. So,
it.
let's just see what comes up.
I
I
mean,
mean,
we
we,
wanted to do a follow-up to the last one, which was kind of like processing what the hell was happening in terms of the pandemic and everything moving to online and um,
well,
yeah.
who should start? Do you want to bring us up to date for you, or shall I start?
Why don't you start? I think I started last time.
It's
Bring us up to date
for,
for you.
for for me. I was completely on Zoom
Mm,
um, until June, and
mm,
a very curious thing happened. And I can't remember when in April we recorded that episode. I want to say early-ish, um, but the weather in Britain was Mediterranean for 2 solid months. Like it was like LA. It was literally 75 degrees and sunny every day, and it was fucking amazing. Like it was really, people were so in the midst of such terror, such like gnashing existential dread. Everyone was just waving, just happy, and just killing it. Everyone was living their best life for 2 months. And in the midst of that, I was exclusively online for them, which is a bit of a shame because I was spending the rest of the day outside except to
mhm.
come in. And then in June, because Cardiff is a city that is just full of parks. It's, unlike a lot of British cities, there was some planning that went into it. So there's really lovely, huge parks.
Similar to
So
Seattle in that way, right?
yeah, it's that sort of thing where there's just a lot of green space. There's a lot of access. If you want the sea, in the same way that there's all the bays and all the inlets in Seattle.
Mhm, mhm,
If you want coastline, you can see it. If you want woods, you can find it. Yeah. Um, so I then started doing sort of like walk and talk therapy for clients,
mhm,
which I had done that before for some people who it had been for clients where it had just been too intense to do this thing, um, which was fine. But the problem is the weather started to change in June, and it started to get a bit more unsettled. And while you get used to over here walking in the rain, even like actual rain, you just get used to pretending like it's not raining. Um, it was just too much to I was having to contract for, okay, the night before I'll check the weather, and then an hour before I'll check the weather because the weather is so subject to change.
mhm.
Um, so it was fine when the weather was good, but it was great to see people in person. It was still a very different experience because over here, the lockdown was very serious. It started late, but it was real serious. I mean, people took it too hard, and that's starting to change now, particularly with younger people, of which I'm obviously not. Um, but yeah, so that was brilliant. Just to get people to get out to, and also to sort of work in a slightly, I don't want to say in a different way, but you know, there was something. It was I don't know if you have you ever done any like walk and talk jobs?
Yeah,
Have you ever tried to meet people that way?
yeah. So my first community mental health experience when
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I worked with criminal offenders, and we were all counseling in the same room in cubicles. And so I got really used to, just to get some space, taking my clients on walks when the weather was nice and going to a nearby park. It worked really well with that population because they were all very highly anxious and traumatized, and it was nice for them to be able to
Sure,
get away.
sure.
In the pandemic, I've been doing that, um, with a few clients who are, they can't get privacy in their own homes. And so
absolutely.
I have a elementary school a few blocks north, and it's close enough to where I have time to leave my house and get there in 5 minutes between sessions. And there's a park there, and we'll go and either sit on the bench or go on a walk or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive things about that. I mean, despite the obvious obsession with the weather, I think that certainly in the age of Zoom, one of the great challenges to delivering therapy in that way is people are coming by and large because relationships in their lives are not supporting them or edifying them or helping them to grow in the way that they want. And by and large, those tend to be their primary relationships, their kids and their partners, husbands, wives, partners, etc. And those are people who are, oh God, this is desperately unprofessional, sorry. And the challenge is you're trying to deliver therapy with them in a room, in a house where those other people are. So in terms of them having literal space from the thing and the people and the relations that are around them, I found that really challenging because, people are whispering and, or people knock on the door, or the partner comes in and goes, oh, where's the iron? Or whatever.
One thing that I've noticed is you can tell when they're holding back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like when they're not saying what they really want to say.
And trying to contract for can we make sure that, you're going to be in the most, there can be as much privacy as possible. I had a bunch of clients who would call me from their car.
I've done a bunch of car sessions, absolutely.
Which was a bit odd, but you were also like, well, we know you're going to be able to speak freely. Whereas, that moment when it was something that I still am trying to process, the intimacy we were allowed to sort of be, to see clients in their bedrooms, to see their stuff, to see their paintings on the wall, to see their clothes on, their wardrobe. And I don't know, some of that took, but those privacy concerns, I think, were the most difficult, because those moments, like you said, when you knew that sometimes you could even hear footsteps or doors closing or such and such talking to such and such, and you try and check in and be like, wow, we're getting, I had a client of 3 years who I've seen for the last 3 years, weekly therapy, dutiful client, who so much of the relationship is her sort of, in her early 40s, managing a turn in her relationship, from a younger period to an older period. They've been together for a long time, but trying to come to terms with where she's at in her life as she gets older, into her mid-40s, sexuality, death, kids, whole thing. And so much has been about her partner, who she really loves and sometimes really doesn't love. And we're having a session the other day, and the door is in the background, about where it would be here, and all of a sudden, there he is. He enters the scene, which is, what an incredible thing to see them. I've had clients be like, oh, the Wi-Fi's crap here, I'll walk down to the kitchen and take me through their house.
You're getting a tour.
Yeah, I mean, has that lined up with your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I've had those experiences of, it's funny, I don't think I've ever Googled people. I really enjoy that space of letting these characters in their sessions be fantasy or be imagined and so, but I've definitely had those moments in the last 6 months where those moments where I had one client where I can hear their partner talking to them, reminding them what to talk to me about off camera. And
I'm talking to my
No,
therapist.
in an adorable way, where the spouse is like,
Ah,
remember to talk to him about this, remember you were going to tell him this story. And it's just a very bizarre phenomenon. There's a lot of interviews.
from the peanut gallery.
There's a lot of interviews that I'm excited about that we've been doing, but one of the ones that I'm really excited about is the interview that I just did with Carlos Padron, a Venezuelan
Mhm.
analyst in New York. And one of the things that he talks quite beautifully about is how the borders have been shut down, and he links that to like our in America, like our national experience of like of of our fear over immigrants, our fear over the virus, this idea that we don't have a safe border, and how Americans don't,
Sure.
this idea that the virus is among us, and also when we're in each other's homes, like where are the boundaries? And he talks about it quite beautifully, but there's all this disorientation towards our borders and our boundaries and our intimacy, and like,
Well, also in terms of, if we're going to expand the socio-political realm into institutions, all of a sudden things that were sacrosanct, things that were immovable and immutable, and, the fucking division of powers that, held the country together, and now, being shat on and then blown apart on a daily basis. So it's just like, like the entire, certainly the entire American experience is in tremendous flux.
yeah.
And yeah, I think something about boundaries, and certainly for the work, boundaries around roles, authority, having to be flexible about the formality of sessions. Like, you can only be so formal in a session. And I tend to be someone who I'm really committed to being myself as close to the person I am now when I'm in
Mm-hmm.
sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to do too much artifice, but of course you adopt a posture, you adopt a certain professionalism. Maybe there's a certain rhythm you speak in when you're in that
and
space,
it
but it's
and it
difficult.
changes from client to client as well, right? Like
Yeah,
certain,
absolutely.
it's responsive to the needs of the clients, some.
Yeah, and there are some people who are going to be seeking a far more structured, what's the word? Dry, detached, formal, like
Mm-hmm.
discourse. And
Mm-hmm.
there are people who are you're going to like swear more and joke more and talk about, I don't know, Ted Nugent. What I'd give to talk about Ted Nugent in therapy. That's never
Have you
happened,
talked
but
about? I have. I've talked about Ted Nugent in therapy. I certainly have talked about Ted Nugent in therapy,
could
because
you?
what a
Wait,
representative of like the mess that our country is in, right? Like what a
yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
I
if you can't find a way to marry Freud and Jung and Wango Tango into the same therapy session, or cat scratch fever, which I'm sure is just a Freudian nightmare in and of itself. Um, but no, like in terms of decorum, those it's difficult to sort of, we all get used to, and I'm certainly, because my office is at the very top floor of this sort of Victorian office block. It's only a
mm-hmm.
three-story building, but mine's the very top, and clients have to ascend to get to me, and I'm sort of waiting for them at the top. And there's a rhythm of how you greet people, and how you sort of set the scene, how you begin the session. And that's not intended to be a power play. That's not intended to be authoritarian, but it's part of setting up the frame of this thing.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do that in a park when people are like
Mm-hmm.
disciplining their shitty kids, and their sirens, or whatever is going on, or the weather is changing, or yeah, it in some ways it becomes a far more, I don't know, in it, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it more colloquial? Is it more I don't want to say it's more personal, because that sounds like it's more
Mm-hmm.
authentic. I don't think that's the case. I think it's certainly less intense. Not so much on Zoom, because I found Zoom a pretty direct medium by and large. I think it has a lot of flaws. Um, but I did find working in that sort of setting a far less intense thing. It
Yeah.
didn't have it. There just wasn't that frisson. There wasn't that energy.
Here's an interesting case study.
Mhm.
Would you like to hear
Go
an
on.
interesting case study? So with one of my clients who I meet in the park, I bring my dog, and my thoughts behind this, well, we've talked a little bit. I'm moving offices soon, and I'm moving to a dog-friendly office, and my plan is to have my dog there all the time eventually. But I also
Really?
know this
In
client.
sessions?
Yeah, yeah.
That's very Seattle. That's peak Seattle.
we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna have a crate if it doesn't go well, but she needs some kind of, she's a working breed, so she needs some kind of like routine. And it's been years since I've been able to bring her.
She's a show dog with papers.
You can't board
her.
But so I've been bringing my dog, and the other thought behind, there's a lot of thoughts. My dog needs exercise, my dog needs attention, my wife needs a break from the dog, and primarily my client loves dogs, and his dog recently passed away, so he had to put his dog down recently. So it's been good for him to be able to play with my dog while we sit on a bench in the park, and I'll let her off leash. But one of the things that's been happening lately that I've noticed is that other people will come to the park and let their dogs off leash, and my dog will perk up and have the energy of a dog that's about to go chase this other dog. And I've noticed that it makes my client pretty anxious about what she's going to do in regards to these other people and their other dogs, to the point of where I've noticed my client calling her back even when I think she's fine. And so it's just an interesting thing to think about. If this was in my office, and even if my dog was there, this would not be an issue, right? The boundaries, the containment would mean that me and my client and my dog are all in this like container together. And it's interesting. I'm starting to think that maybe what was originally like a very soothing thing for this client has become an anxiety-inducing thing for this client that wouldn't exist if we weren't like out in the park with the world still happening around us.